Joe, when it comes to business cases, I can understand that you start with a range of ideas and you're going to boil those down to come up with a preferred solution. And you do that through some options appraisal. So what is this options framework filter that I hear about?
That's a good question. Now, the good things in life are built out of necessity. Now, I was working up in Scotland. I was working on the new hospital in Edinburgh, the replacement of the old Royal Edinburgh Infirmary with a hospital in East Linton. And in those stages, I was writing an outline business case because that was the starting point in those days. And every time I went up, the management board had either changed or wanted to change the options. And we were going over and over and over it. So in the end, I thought, I'm going to write an early version of the business case. I'm not going to do it at the planning stage. I'm going to do it at the scoping stage. And I'm going to call it a strategic outline case. So we'll start with scoping rather than planning in detail. That's the first point. The second point is I have to get through this business of options, because when you think about it, Richard, there are millions of options potentially for a new hospital. If it's 800 beds, arguably that there are 800 options in terms of volume. Anyway, I thought, well, how am I going to do that? And then I was reminded of a poem, and I thought, well, I've got to disaggregate options and take them through it. I'll take them through options for what, for how, for who, where, etc. And that was the genesis, would you believe, of the SOC, the early version business case that we now do for projects, and the options framework filter, which we abbreviate to the OFF. So what we do in a workshop, having worked out the investment objectives for the scheme and the case for change and strategic fit in workshop 1, what we do in workshop 2 with key stakeholders and customers is to work through the options. And this is how it goes in relation to the OP. So the first thing we do is look at coverage scope. What volume of service do we want to provide? So in a hospital, what are the range of services we want to provide or need to provide? What are the numbers involved? Because at this stage, it's all about service demand and capacity planning. It's all about scope. It's not about capital and hospitals and square footage. It's about services. What do we need to provide? What would we like to provide? What can we provide on top of that? And we call that essential, or if you like, core, desirable, optional. And we work through the options in terms of scope. So in IT, that can relate to functionality and volumes. In education, it can involve the curriculum and number of pupils. In health, it's the number of health services and volumes, etc. This is key to the business case. So the starting point is not capital, buildings and solutions. It's not infrastructure. It's what we need to provide in terms of services. And then we come on to solution. What are the solutions? What is available? That's where we get involved in terms of building IT solutions. It could even be vehicles. And so once we've worked through the preferred option, the preferred way forward for scope, we come on to what are in relation to that preferred way forward for scope, what are the options in terms of solution? We work through what the options were. So a building, it might be to refurbish the building, to move out of the building. It might be to build a new building on the existing site. I don't know. We work through these options, and you can see how that relates to schools, hospitals, etc. We then get on to service delivery. Who's going to provide the service? Who's going to look after the infrastructure? So in terms of schools, we can accept that we will employ the teachers. That's national policy. We won't hire them from an organisation, but there is an issue over who's going to actually manage the building and look after the maintenance. So there are options for service delivery with a lot of public sector schemes. There's also an option in terms of time. We either try in the public sector, we seem to do things either too slowly or too quickly. But in most cases, we plan to do them too quickly. Why do I say that? Because I know only 1 in 3 projects will be a success. 2 in 3 projects fail and come nowhere close to time specification and cost. I know that actually they take 66% longer to deliver on average. So we need to look carefully at the options for implementation. And by the way, whilst I'm talking about this, they also deliver significantly less than they seek to in the order of a third. Why? To descope the programme or project, keep it within budget. So we have to realistically look at the implementation options, balancing the benefit of delivering early against the attendant risks. And we do that for the preferred way forward in relation to scope, solution, and service delivery. And finally, we've got options for funding. We can use public money, we can use private money, we can use a combination of the two, and there are any number of ways of doing this. So we look at those options. So we come up with a preferred scope, way forward for scope, a preferred way forward for solution, a preferred way forward for service delivery, a preferred way forward for implementation, a preferred way forward for funding. And at the SOC stage, we referred to that as the preferred way forward. At the OBC stage, when we've undertaken cost-benefit analysis in accordance with the Green Book, we referred to it as the preferred option. That's what we were looking for. We also have business as usual. The state of the world we would live in the absence of our scheme. That is the counterfactual for the preferred option in terms of adjudicating on public value and value for money. But we also have, very sensibly, because of affordability requirements, we have what we refer to as the do minimum. And the do minimum covers off core essential requirements. It doesn't cover off on those requirements that are desirable and optional, that actually might cost in terms of cost benefit. That is the do minimum. And in addition, we might have variations on the preferred way forward, a more ambitious option, a less ambitious option. And that is the importance of the options framework. So typically for a scheme, when you take it through this process, you will discover that you're looking at, in some cases, way in excess of 1,000 variants in the options, and you're doing that at an early stage. And the incredible thing in the workshop is it demonstrates to people why we're discounting choices rather than making choices. And that actually has proven to me in the past to be a key thing at the early stage, why we're not doing something, as opposed to doing something.